Hello and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we're playing Starfield and I'm going to be showing you 5 more Star Trek ship designs. So, Star Trek is a large franchise with a lot of ships in it. I've already done a video on this one where I showed you how to make the NX-01 Enterprise from Star Trek Enterprise, the Enterprise D from Star Trek The Next Generation, the Defiant from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and both the Voyager and the Prometheus from Star Trek Voyager. So if you want to check out that video, that one will show you how to make a bunch of Federation ships. I think they all turned out looking pretty dang good, and stat-wise are all quite good ships. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you some other ships from Star Trek. So I've recreated in the game a Borg Cube, which you've probably seen people do before. I like the one I made because it's a little bit less bulky than a lot of the ones that other people have made, because I made it hollow and all the components are internal, and it turned out pretty good. But that's one of the ships that we're doing. We're also going to be doing a Ferengi ship, a Romulan ship, a Cardassian ship, and a Klingon ship. So this one offers you a lot of the most iconic alien ships from Star Trek. So hopefully you enjoy that. We're going to go through all of them. We're going to be starting off with the Borg Cube. Only thing that I was just considering was that, considering I do have internal space, because like I said, oops, hurt my leg a little bit there. The inside of this ship is hollow because I just made it a big hollow cube. I probably could have mounted the weapons on the inside of this ship and still used it effectively, because I don't think it actually matters if anything is physically blocking your weapons in this game. I think they still fire and work effectively. So I might have to try that, because then I would truly have the actual Borg Cube design. But anyway, let's just start it off. I will show you not how to step-by-step build all of these ships, but I'll show you enough that if you want to try recreating any of them with this video, it should be pretty easy to do. So let's just dive on in and start off with the Borg Cube. So you can see, obviously, with the Borg Cube, we weren't going to sacrifice stats on this one because it's a big old block and we can just hide all the components inside. So it is a top-level tier 6 ship. The only external stuff that we currently have on it, other than, because we wanted to keep the nice QB shape, we have obviously our landing bay down on the bottom, some landing gears on the bottom as well. We have our weapons on the outside, but like I was just thinking in my head, I could honestly probably mount them all internally and it would probably still work. I'm going to have to give that a try after this video and see if it works. And if it does, I can take all these weapons off the outside and then it would look even better as a Borg Cube. Only thing other than that is we do have a docker on the top. So yeah, that is our Borg Cube. It's all black like the Borg Cubes are in the show, with some green accents scattered around because the Borg Cubes have like green lights on them. I think it turned out looking really good if you like a Borg Cube. It's definitely not aesthetically my favorite ship from Star Trek, but it works pretty dang well, and because of how much hull you have, it's a very tanky ship. So yeah, that's the general look of it. I'm not going to go step by step because this one is obviously just a cube. You should be able to figure it out. I did random components as much as I could to try and give it a more random design, because the Borg Cubes from the show are not perfect. They're very, very asymmetrical. They have pipes and tubes and stuff going all over the place, so I wanted the outline of it to not be a smooth block. So I just used lots of different hab units, different types stacked on top of each other. Used some components, like I have a Nova bracer thrown in there here and there. We've got a Tayo spine thrown in on the bottom over here. Used quite a few of these Hope Tech cap Bs scattered around the whole thing just to make sure that we then hollowed out sections. So it's not all uniform and blocky. For engines, I used the SA 5660 engines. I have 4 of those on the back. I use those because, especially if you make them all black and everything, you can't see them very much, and they're nice and square, so they definitely fit the Borg Cube design very well. And 4 of them gives you a lot of thrust, making the ship not nearly as slow as it would be otherwise. But for general builds, we have the Hope 4 landing bay on the bottom on the front. Then we have 4 of these Nova Galactic NG-20 landing gears on one side and 2 on the other side. So it's asymmetrical, but it gives us enough thrust and therefore works for me. Like I already showed you, we have the engines on the back. Then as far as hab units, there's nothing in the center internal. It's all on the outside. So I have the bay here, and right above that we have a Hope Tech Living Quarters 2x1 that connects our bay to the outside. And then we have a 2x1 here, and a 2x1 here, and a 2x1 here, and a 2x1 here. Those are the only solid, 2-layer 2x1s. The rest I tried to make it as random as possible. So right next to that we also have a 2x1. So the whole bottom layer here actually has a lot of internal space. A fun thing about the ship is the cockpit is actually internally located. So you can see I have hab units on this bottom layer going kind of all the way across, and then they go along the sides and to the back. And so stacked up the back, then we have the hab units going up to this is just a stack of 1x1 companionways. That leads us up to our docker, and we have our internally located cockpit here. So flying in first person on the ship would not be easy, but third person is perfectly fine, because you just get into your cockpit in here, and all the rest of, you can see the rest of our components that are important are also in there. So we have 2 fuel tanks, which gives us plenty of fuel for the ship, and then we have our reactor and our grav drive are all located on the inside. And like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm going to try and mount these weapons internally because I think that might also work. But overall, pretty simple and straightforward design. Not a whole lot to talk about. You're just making a big cube. As far as hab layout goes, you just have to make sure A, you have enough capacity so you can have a lot of crew on the ship, because it would be foolish not to, and so that you can get around and get up to your cockpit and your docking port. But yeah, that's our Borg Cube. Next up, we're moving up to our Galor Class Cruiser, which is the main Cardassian battleship that you'll see in Deep Space Nine. And I think they might have shown up a couple times in Next Generation, but I'm not sure. But they're in Deep Space Nine a lot. And so these ones are the ships that belong to the Cardassian. And once again, we have a Class C ship with pretty dang solid stats across the board. And I think it actually turned out looking a lot like the Cardassian ship does in Star Trek. So as far as building this one, it's pretty straightforward. We've got our Hope 4 landing bay on the bottom. No other hab units or anything like that on the bottom. We just have some landing gears. So we have 2 of these NG-20 landing gears right behind it. And that is all of the landing gears that the ship has. So just these 2 NG-20 landing gears right behind the landing bay. Above the landing bay, we have a 2x1 unit. I just have a workshop there. Nothing behind it though. Above that workshop, we have 3 2x1s. In the center, I have a living quarters, then a living quarters on the side, and another living quarters out there. So we can fit plenty of crew in this ship. Above that central living quarters, oh, I said 2x1s. That central one is actually a 3x1. But above that 3x1 right in the middle, we have a 1x1 companionway, and we have our docker on top of that. And then our DS-40.2 Ares bridge from Deimos for our bridge on this ship. So that is all of the internal space. You can see it's just clustered right in this clump here. 1 2x1 on the bottom with a landing bay below that, 3x1 above that, 2 more 2x1s, a 1x1 in the cockpit. All the rest of this is structural or functional. So to make our big wing section on the front, in front of this 2x1, we have a Nova wing port. Then we have off to the side a Deimos hull with another wing port in front of that, and then a wing port on the side. So that's how you make both sides of that. To make up for the little, what I assume is like a deflector array on the Cardassian ship, we have the porthole on the front. I made it blue, and then the Deimos belly 4 to give us that sloping side. Off to the sides here, we've got our SA-5660 engine, one on either side, and then a Taio midcap STBD bottom. You could do that, or you could also do a cargo hull here if you want to have more cargo space on the ship. I was just trying to keep the mast down as low as possible. Off to the side of our engine, we have a Taio sidecap B, which is where we are able to mount a weapon. So 2 of our engines for the ship are located right here, and then we have another one of them in the way back of our tail section. And speaking of our tail section, right above this landing gear, we have our reactor. It's a Class C, so it takes up 2 layers. This landing gear has our grav drive right above it, and above that we have our shield generator. Then on the rear, we have 1 fuel tank, the 500T by Ballistic Solutions. That gives us 210 fuel. Behind that, we have our SAE 5660 engine, our 3rd one on the ship. To make the back section, we couldn't do it perfectly because those ones have the 2 little forks that come up off the top of the back, so they're not off to the side. But this is the best I could do. I did the Nova Wing STBD for the side on both sides, and then a Deimos Tail A for both of those. And then I made everything a kind of orangish gold color. Oh, and I covered up a lot of this back tail section with these Taio side caps. I wish we had a top cap to make it look more solid. But as it is, it turned out looking pretty good. It looks a lot like the Cardassian Galor Cruiser from Deep Space Nine. And overall, stat-wise and performance-wise, it's honestly a really good ship. So that's our Cardassian ship. Moving on to our D'Kora Marauder. This is a Ferengi ship. It is, I don't know if it ever shows up in Deep Space Nine, given how much Ferengis are in that show, but it shows up several times in the Next Generation. And it turned out pretty cool in here. I think it looks pretty nice, and it has solid stats. So you can see that once again, we're a Class C ship. Solid shields, grav drive, engine. We've got 2 full. We have a Hellion beam battery, and then a Gauss gun, so ballistic battery, and then a missile battery that you could obviously, if you wanted it to be full, you could just add one more missile launcher somewhere on the ship. I just didn't want to ruin the central lines of the ship too much. As far as building this one goes, on the bottom we have our Nova Galactic NG6 landing bay. Right behind that we've got a landing gear, our reactor, our grav drive, and our big fuel tank. So the whole center of this is mostly functional. We have 2 more landing gears. We have 2 more Nova Galactic ones, so the same ones that give you the 4 thrust. So just 3 total on this ship, so not actually that much. The rear engine alignment is, we have 4 of these SA-4330 engines from Slayton Aerospace on the sides. You could obviously do whatever you want considering it's boxed in. I just liked the way this looked, and I designed it before I had all the structural stuff on it. So arguably you could get away with less engines if you just used a bunch of the SAE 5660 engines from Slayton Aerospace, because they give you a lot more engine thrust and maneuvering thrust. But I liked the way it turned out, so I kept it like that. Our hab layout for this one, directly above our landing bay, you can see that we have a Deimos living quarters here, 3x1, Right behind that, we have a living quarters that's 2x1, and that allows the space for our reactors and stuff. Behind and above that 2x1, we've got, you can see we have 2 more on the sides of that bottom layer. So 2 more, we have a workshop on this side and a captain's quarters on this side. And then above that, we've got another 2x1 living quarters right in the center. And above that, that connects to our companionway, which has our docker on it, and our Overseer 400 bridge from Hope Tech, which gives us all of our interior space. The rest of this is all structural. So not habitable, but it keeps the ship from getting too confusing to try and navigate around it. The front of the ship was pretty simple to make. We just have a porthole on the front, then we've got these Stroud caps and our Stroud cap Bs for the aft part of it to give us the shape of that, to have some Demos spines running down the middle, to a cowling. The back section took me a while to get done right. The ship itself has an interesting curved design where it kind of comes out from the central neck and then curves back into the wing, and then the wings themselves curve back. So we were able to imitate that relatively well. Most of our shapes on this are made up of, well, I have some engine mounts right here that I used, above the workshop just for the shape there, but you could use any structural component. Use some of these Stroud cowlings for the outside stuff, more of these Stroud caps for the back curves to give us those slight curves. Our top is mostly the Stroud cap A for a lot of these side slanting ones, and then we've got these Stroud nose caps for the 2 front ones and these 3 back ones. Honestly, took me a long time to build this one, and in the end I think it turned out looking pretty good, but it's hard to get the shapes right for a lot of these ships with the rather limited components we have in Starfield. And then I topped it all off with like a weird pinkish color, because it was the Ferengi ships have this weird, it's not quite pinkish, I went a little bit too pinkish, but when I was doing the more orangish color like they are, it just didn't look right. So yeah, that is our Ferengi D'Kora Marauder. Moving on to our Klingon ship, we have a Cavort light cruiser. This is most commonly known as the Bird of Prey. It's probably the most common Klingon ship that you see in like Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, you know, that era of Star Trek. Obviously, when it's in attack mode, you'll see these wings, they kind of curve down, which makes it look more bird-like and iconically Klingon, but we don't have that ability in here, so I just have them in the kind of like cruising position that you'll often see them in the show. But yeah, I like the way this one turned out. It's once again a Class C ship with really, really good stats, and this one is actually quite a bit of fun to fly. So how to build this one? We have our landing bay on the bottom, but no hab quarters down here, so just the landing bay. Then off to the side of the landing bay, we have 2 of these NG-20 landing gears, and we only need these 2 on the sides and this one on the front. That provides us all of the landing gear thrust that we need for the ship. The rear of it, we have 2 of these 40T cargo haulers, so plenty of cargo space, and a Class B grav drive, just because I couldn't fit a Class C in the ship. I needed the space for everything else, and I didn't want to screw up the design of it. Our engine layout on the back, we've got 2 of these SAE 5660 engines, 1 on either side, and then 2 of the White Dwarf 2030 ones. The top here, you can see we have our Class C reactor and then our shield generator on top of that. The hab layout for this one is pretty simple. Wish it wasn't being so glitchy right now. It's lagging around. We have 2 of these Demos 3x1 living quarters, giving us plenty of living space, and that's how it connects to our engine bay, or our landing bay. Then we have a Viking cockpit off the front. Right above this 3x1, we have a 2x1 workshop. Above that, we have a dock. And so that is all of the internal hab space. The rest is structural. I did the Nova cowlings for the rest of the shape off of the Viking cockpit on the front. We have a Nova cowling right here, a Demos cowling right there. We have 2 of our fuel tanks, the M30 Ulysses fuel tanks. I use these Nova radiators because they actually look a lot like the radiators that the ship has in Star Trek. Below that, we have a Demos hull A that starts our wing. Then we have 2 of these Stroud engine bracers and a Demos wing A port for the side, and starboard for the side. And then 2 of the Nova wings off to the side up here. Honestly, pretty simple design, and I've seen a lot more complex Klingon Bird of Prey designs for Starfield so far, but I really like the way this one turned out. It's a lot of fun to fly, and it's not nearly as bulky as a lot of the ones where you try to make it look like it's got the wings that are sloping down. So yeah, that is our Klingon ship. And finally, for our Romulan ship, I went all around. I was going to do the D'Kora Cruiser, the really popular one that you see in like Deep Space Nine and Next Generation, you know, the big green one. But it was just, you can't do it without mods that at least remove your building limit because it's too big and bulky that way. So I went with the Tallis class light cruiser that I believe might be from Star Trek Picard. I just went with it because it was a slightly more modern version of what the Bird of Prey looked like in the original series. And so it's basically just a Romulan Bird of Prey. So a small, simple ship. On this one, because it's small, it's pretty easy to build. We've got our NG6 landing bay on the bottom. Right above that, we've got a 3x1 living quarters. Then we've got some our landing gears, 3 of those Nova Galactic ones on the bottom here. Above that 3x1 living, we have the rest of our hab units are all up top. So we have 2 of these 2x1. So I have a captain's quarters and another living quarters. Then we have a workshop and an infirmary. battery. That's all of our hab space. On the front, we have our Cabot C4 bridge from Nova Galactic. Off to the side, for the rest of the shape of our hull here, we've got 2 of those Stroud caps. The back is all structural, so we've got these Stroud mid-bracers for our nacelle wings, and then some Deimos hulls for the back. Our little wing thing on the back is the Deimos Spine A4 with the Deimos tail behind it, and we are able to mount some weapons on that. Our Connect Pro Docker is on the top. We have a shield generator out there. Our nacelles themselves, we have 2 of these Taio cowlings on either side. Then to give us plenty of cargo space, I have 2 Galleon S202 cargo holds on this part of the nacelle for both sides. Behind that, we just have these 2 structural components. You could do extra fuel tanks here if you wanted, or you could do more cargo space for usable stuff if you wanted. Our engine alignment here, we have 4 of these SAE 5660 engines, 2 on either nacelle, and that gives us all of our thrust. And then all of the rest of the stuff is tucked in as nicely as I could. You can see up on the front here, we've got a Nova bracer. We have 2 of these 500T helium tanks to give us plenty of fuel. Our grav drive, I went with a Class B so I could fit it in just 1 slot up here on the front. So that's all of our, functional components. And then our weapons are tucked away as nicely as possible because the ship itself in the show has very smooth lines. So we have our ballistic battery, is all these Gauss guns are back on this tail. Everything else is tucked underneath. So we have missile launchers on the sides of these Stroud caps over on the outside, and then our auto Hellion beams are all located on our reactor on the back. So they just tuck neatly in there and fire right through in the middle between these landing things. So honestly, I like the way this one turned out. It's a lot of fun to fly. It's a pretty nimble, maneuverable ship. Easy to navigate because the internal space is all pretty simple, but it has a lot of firepower, shield, space, and actually can haul quite a bit of cargo because of these 4 cargo holds. So I really like the way this one turned out. Like I said, for a Romulan ship, I was going to do the D'Kora decks because it's just more iconic, I think, but in the end, it was just proving too difficult, so the Talis class light cruiser is the one that I ended up going with. And that is it for these other 5 ships from Star Trek. So I brought you a video that shows 5 Federation ships, and I think all of those turned out really good, and now we have 5 non-Federation ships. So hopefully for all the Star Trek fans out there, you are able to find the ship that you want to build in Starfield on my channel now. But with all that in mind, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.